Welcome to our guide on AWS Config. Today, I'm diving into how AWS Config can be your go-to tool for monitoring, auditing, and managing the configuration of your AWS resources. Let's get started. Managing the configuration of hundreds or even thousands of AWS resources can be challenging. How do you ensure that all your resources comply with your security policies? For instance, are all your S3 buckets private? Do your EC2 instances and private subnets lack public IP addresses? And are your user passwords meeting complexity requirements? AWS Config is the solution to this challenge. It helps you monitor and enforce compliance with your security policies across your AWS environment. So, what is AWS Config? AWS Config is a service that provides auditing, compliance monitoring, and configuration management for your AWS resources. It continuously monitors and records the configuration of your resources, allowing you to track changes and ensure compliance. With AWS Config, you can discover existing resources, track configuration changes, and receive notifications when changes occur. This makes it easier to enforce security policies and troubleshoot issues. Here's how AWS Config works. A configuration change occurs in your AWS resources. AWS Config records and stores the change in an Amazon S3 bucket. AWS Config evaluates the change against your defined rules. If the change violates a rule, AWS Config sends a notification via Amazon SNS. You can view the change history and compliance results in the AWS Config console. AWS Config uses rules to evaluate the configuration of your resources. You can use predefined managed rules or create custom rules using AWS Lambda. These rules help you enforce best practices and ensure compliance with your security policies. AWS Config is invaluable for security and compliance. Compliance auditing. Demonstrate compliance with internal policies and regulations. Security analysis. Detect potential security weaknesses in your resource configurations. Change management. Track changes and detect misconfigurations. Troubleshooting. Investigate the impact of configuration changes on related resources. To get the most out of AWS Config, follow these best practices. Enable AWS Config in all AWS regions to ensure comprehensive coverage. Use managed rules to enforce common best practices. Create custom rules for specific security requirements. Integrate with Amazon SNS to receive real-time notifications. Regularly review compliance reports to ensure ongoing adherence to your policies. Let's recap what we've learned. AWS Config helps you discover resources, track changes, and notify on rule violations. It contributes to security by enforcing policies and automating compliance checks. An example of a security-related rule is ensuring S3 buckets are not public. Here are the key takeaways from this lesson. AWS Config provides continuous monitoring of your AWS resource configurations. It helps enforce security policies and compliance through the use of rules. AWS Config simplifies troubleshooting and change management, making it easier to maintain a secure and compliant AWS environment. By leveraging AWS Config, you can ensure your AWS resources are secure, compliant, and well managed. Thanks for watching and stay secure. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more AWS security tips and tricks.